Friends, I am so excited for this first impression because it's not just a manga first impression, it is also my very first novel impression that I'm doing on this channel, at least when it comes to manga related things. Hello friends, happy Friday. Very excited. I have been in an intense reading book cave. Honestly, I feel like it started on Friday and I talked about my manga news video of how Not Your Typical Reincarnation Story got licensed physically, and I literally spent that entire weekend just binge reading it, which is sort of not usual for me to do that intense of a binge read. Like, I stayed up till midnight Saturday to read, and then Monday came around and then I binge read a novel, and let's go ahead and say what that is and jump right in, and that is volume 1 of Villains Are Destined to Die, the novel. And man, I literally spent all Monday just reading this. I couldn't put it down. I have so many thoughts and hope that I can do this video justice. I know several people have asked me to do like a comparison between the novel and the manhwa, and so hopefully I can give those thoughts. But I'll also be sharing some first impressions on some manga, with it being Mechanical Marie as well as Reincarnated in a Mafia dating sim, which does have a subtitle. We'll just stick with the main title. So I'm going to be sharing thoughts on all of these, and I will just say I loved all of them. They were very enjoyable. One of these for sure has, I feel as if right now is my favorite read of this month, or at least in my top 3. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump right in. We're going to be starting with Villains Are Destined to Die, since that is the first one I read. I should have put Penelope's face here. I didn't, because let me first tell you like about it, and then let me tell you a hot take that I had, at least a hot take I feel is about myself with this. So in case if you're not familiar with this series, it is about our main female lead, who is not unfortunately on the cover, but that is Penelope. And before she was Penelope, because she's been reincarnated to a otome game as the villainess, before that she lived in a horrible like not lifestyle, but like home life was awful. And so she has basically fought to get out of that. She's now in college and she hears all her friends talking about this game. Does it say the name? Yeah, Daughter of the Duke Super Love Project. And she's like, this sounds so cheesy, so bad. But she ends up playing it, gets hooked, and then she finds out that there is a hard mode, because she beat all of easy mode, I think it was like in 3 hours or something. Decides to play hard mode, because in easy mode you are the heroine, in hard mode you play from the perspective of the villainess. Every time she tries to complete a route, the main female lead, Penelope in this case, ends up dying, and she's so frustrated, stays up all night, and eventually she just ends up sort of crashing and burning and falling asleep. But when she wakes up the next day, she is in the body of Penelope, and she's sort of alarmed, freaking out a little bit, because similar to the game, when she is confronted by one of the love interests, aka Derek, who's the first one we meet, she is given a dialogue pop-up box where she can only choose these 3 answers in order to respond to them. She can't make any kind of other response. This game will not let her. Now, having played the game, she knows which routes are going to lead to doom, more or less, but not fully, because she never could beat it either. So here Penelope is with the love interest all at either at 0%, because if you get to 100%, then it is a guaranteed successful route where the male lead, or the love interest, excuse me, says that they love Penelope or love the heroine when she played easy mode. And yeah, now on hard mode as Penelope, they're either at 0% or below 0%. And if that number drops at all, that's it. That's the end of Penelope. So she is navigating her new life as this villainess with these love interests who seem to hate her guts. Now, it is no secret, I am a huge fan of Penelope. She's one of my favorite characters. Like, she is my favorite female character. In fact, you know, if you look at my profile picture, you'll see that it's me and her. And it says #1 fan because, yeah, I feel like I am at least one of those #1 fans. Maybe not #1 ultimate, but I am in that because I adore her. I love her. And it was very fascinating, interesting reading the original novel, though I will say from the first thing I thought of when I was reading is the manhwa is an incredible, faithful adaptation. I was shocked of how there's maybe 2 or 3 scenes that are in the novel that I don't recall being in the manhwa. And now, granted, I have not read any of the novels of manhwa that I've collected, like The Remarried Empress and My Secretly Hot Husband. I haven't read the original novel, so I can't compare for other series or anything like that, but I did not expect to find a manhwa adaptation just so incredibly faithful to the original novel that the tone was captured. Though that leads me to say, though, yes, I definitely feel like if you didn't want to read the novel and just stick with the manhwa, you could 100% do that. If you want to read just the manhwa and not read the novel, you could also do that. The story is the same. I feel like everything, the timeline, everything is the same, and so I don't feel like you're super missing out by not reading one or the other, but I still cannot exactly pinpoint what it is. When I read the novel, there is a different tone. I don't even know if saying that is fully accurate, because I have definitely compared the novel to the manhwa, and I feel like it'll have the same wordage, but it feels different in the novel for some reason. It's like some of the love interests felt a lot more intense in the novel than they did in the manhwa. Like, that's probably the biggest discrepancy, if that's the right word for that, when it comes to them, is that the manhwa is toned down in certain scenes. When it comes to when Penelope meets Eccles for the very first time, in the manhwa it shows that he only fights 3 hyenas, but in the novel he fought 5, and not only that, he injured some other people after that, and there is a scariness to him, I feel like, in the novel that wasn't captured quite as strongly in the manhwa. And now I appreciate that in the manhwa that it's toned down, because yeah, he was one of my, when I first started the manhwa, he was one of my all-in guys, as Penelope says. Yeah, in the novel I was like, girl, no. Your eggs should not all be in one basket for Eccles, because he was really scary to me and much more, maybe not intimidating, but it's very hard when you can't see his face the same way you can in the manhwa, where you have to visualize in your head, and sometimes I'm not even quite sure of, I wouldn't say like not able to visualize what the expression he's making, because I can, but it feels like it's almost harder to determine what is he actually thinking, which was pretty scary, honestly. I mean, I know I already said that, but I was just really surprised by some of the language that was used in the novel that was in the manhwa that did make things seem a lot bleaker. And that's another thing that I thought very interesting when reading this, is you can really feel Penelope's frustration. You can really feel her anger. Yes, you get that in the manhwa for sure, but there is a different kind, as I was saying before, maybe a different kind of tone, an underlying tone maybe, of where Penelope's just not happy to be here. To the point where she thinks, well, maybe since she knows that one of the love interests takes her out in the beginning in the game, that she's like, well, maybe if I go to him again and we reenact, so to speak, this scene, maybe a reset button will pop up and I'll be able to go back home. But girl went and there was no reset button, and that's when things got really real for her, and that's when that frustration, I feel like, is really leaking out through her mannerisms, that it's undeniable of how in the manhwa I feel like I sort of felt that she's coping, and she's still coping in the novel, but she definitely has more of a sassy tone, I feel like, almost. But she really makes it known in very subtle ways, I feel, where you just know she is not happy to be here. She's angry, and there's people may say she's lashing out, but if only they knew why she's lashing out. No, but that's some of it too. She's not even lashing out the same way the OG Penelope did, because the OG Penelope would have flipped a table, thrown a fit. No, Penelope instead is groveling at the feet of, say, like her father, and it was hard. It was hard seeing it in this way, of how she really is willing to do anything to keep herself alive when she realizes that, well, even before she meets the crazy prince here, even before then, that she is not afraid to say, I'm sorry, even though the girl hasn't even done anything. And so I want, I guess, to bring that to say is I felt that a lot stronger in the novel. But guys, let me tell you, I don't know if it's because I could not see his face the same way in the manhwa when you're reading, since you're reading more pictures. I did not hate Derek's guts in the beginning. Yes, I just as shocked as you, friend. Like, I'm not gonna say we were chill. We were not chill. But I don't know. He's still a jerk. And don't worry, I'm back to my hater status. Him and I can't stand his guts. But not being able to see his face, I think, in the beginning was sort of like a positive thing for me in that sense. He felt much more colder in my mind than he did in the manhwa. Same thing, but I think just the way I was perceiving him when reading it through just words, that I was like, okay, I can't see your handsome face like in the manhwa and then be mad about the dumb things you're saying. But, you know, once we get to a scene where he gives her an item, him. Oh yeah, we were back to full-on hate. Very much reminded of why I don't like your character. So yeah, and I will say Reynolds, his voice, I feel was captured perfectly. It was so easy, especially with the Reynolds scenes. It was so easy to picture the manhwa, like the paneling in my head, which was a really cool experience because he sounds exactly the same. I mean, everybody does, but like Reynolds was just 10 out of 10, perfect. I was remembering, since I'm up to date with the manhwa, and I also keep up with spoilers for the manhwa and the novel, that I do know things that happen later on, but I was reminded in the beginning I was like, Reynolds, you just keep going in and out the doghouse here. Had some mixed feelings, but definitely remembered those cute moments that we have with him. And then Eccles, I've already mentioned about him, how he was more scary, but the one that surprised me the most, and I've got to be really careful of what I say here, because I'm just talking about the beginning, not things that happen later. And I will mention that the manhwa covers of the novel, it's all of volumes 1 and 2, and then I think half of volume 3. Winter, though, he was, in my opinion, he was so much scarier in the novel than he was in the manhwa. This is a light spoiler. I'm not going to say the numbers, but when Penelope meets Winter, not for the very first time, because he was such a gentleman, but when she meets him at a different place that's in his element, his domain, for a lack of a better word, we knew he was pretty unhinged in that moment, and he was very angry at Penelope, to the point that in the manhwa, Penelope was like, if I don't answer, this might be game over. And that's in the novel. But what's different compared to the manhwa is the numbers dropped. I will just say they're still in the positives. In the novel, those numbers dropped to the negatives. And I was like, excuse me, what? Winter, his numbers dropped to the negative. And I felt like that was the key moment for me, where Winter seemed like the best out of all of the guys, in the sense he didn't seem unhinged. He wasn't angry like Reynolds. He wasn't always blaming Penelope like Derek. Wasn't absolutely afraid of him like Callisto. No, he gave off this aura that he is a gentleman, that he respects Penelope. But in that moment, I was like, Winter, you're just as terrifying as all the other men. Maybe it's more subtle, and again, things happen with me and Winter later on, and my feelings towards him, but in this moment, I felt like I really didn't have anybody that I was shipping with Penelope when it comes to the novel. I was like, Penelope, I'm scared for you with all of these guys, and I did not feel that way when it came to the manhwa. When Eccles had me sort of scared at times, I went all in for Winter. But I was like, when I read the novel, I was like, no, we ain't all in for anybody, except for Penelope. I was so scared for her, and I honestly wish that was captured in the manhwa, because I feel like my feelings would have been different. So it's not an ultimate game changer. The numbers maybe don't necessarily matter, in the sense you can still see that Penelope is terrified in that moment. You still see the fear she has of those numbers dropping rather than going up, which is one of the things she wants to avoid the most. So I was really on the edge of my seat, I feel like, with Winter especially. Like, it was just scary. And I mean, he acted the same, and I do feel the funny thing is I feel like when you, at least when I think back, because I didn't actively read from cover to cover volume 1 and 2, I didn't feel like Winter had this overly romantic scene, but in the novel, yes. I thought it was the most romantic scene out of any of the novel at all. I felt my heart skip a beat. I felt myself almost about to swoon. I said, girl, don't do it, because we just saw what he just did to Penelope. Like, no. This ain't the time, heart. This ain't the time. So I really did like that. So Winter, I feel like for anything about the novel that was most surprising to me, it was definitely the things that happened with Winter, because they were, overall, they're conveyed the same way in the manhwa, but it just hit different when it came to the novel. And then Callisto. Now, I was terrified of Callisto in the beginning. I would like to say that when I read it, I didn't feel that same as strong fear, just because I know now at this point I'm Team Callisto, but in the beginning, I was trying to really not think of things that I had read and just be in the moment. And yeah, he's still pretty scary. And I really don't blame Penelope for any of the fear she feels, how she crosses out his name on paper like, no, he ain't even a consideration. And I really enjoyed that part a lot. One thing I forgot when reading the novel that I really loved seeing is Emily's redemption, who is the maid that serves Penelope. The fear was exactly the same. The upset that happens in the manhwa was the same for the novel. Like, I had the exact same reaction, but it was a very touched scene, almost what felt like a slow progression, not their friendship, but their relationship healing, coming to be very different than what it is at the beginning. I really, really enjoyed that. And that was one thing I did notice, I feel like, with the novel, is I felt more of a progression of time compared to the manhwa. I don't really know what that is. Maybe because it's a little bit easier to see when somebody's talking and then they don't answer, because it'll be like quotation marks and then 3 dots. So I felt I was able to pause the conversations a little bit easier, where it's like you can feel how heavy certain conversations are and how also upsetting things are, of how Penelope is really thinking about what she is trying to say, and when she's not thinking about things. For example, when she has the ultimate like conversation with Reynolds, which I didn't expect for that to be in this volume, but it was. Yeah, there is a lot of weight on that, and I definitely enjoyed how it was all conveyed. It was good. From start to finish. There was only like one part that I felt myself getting, I don't want to use bored, but because the beginning was like the manhwa so closely follows the novel, I do feel that the only part my mind wandered was in the beginning, when Penelope's breaking down what she knows about each of the love interests, what their percents are and everything. I did feel my mind wandering, but I definitely feel saying that it was just because I already knew the information, and that's not the most exciting part of the story. It's still good, don't get me wrong. It wasn't an info dump or anything like that. I thought it was engaging. I just was like, okay, I already know this, so I want to get to the good part, so to speak. So that's the only part I ever felt that was sort of, you know, a little slow for me. But despite that I knew the story already because of the manhwa, I was very surprised how invested I was into the novel. Like, I had no issues. Now, I guess this is a good point to say, well, which one would I recommend if you hadn't read the story? Or which one would, like, if you read the manhwa, would I say, do you need to read the novel? I am going to continue both. I feel like I'm going to make some people sad by saying this, but I feel I prefer the manhwa overall. Am I going to stop buying the novels? Definitely not. I enjoy how both of them complement each other. One of the scenes that I was actually very thankful wasn't in the manhwa. Now, I did not look very closely to see if I could exactly find it, because it was triggering in the novel for me to a point where I had to put it down for a second and take a breather. But there is a scene where Penelope is having a flashback of her time when she was in Korea and how she was physically beaten by her classmates. I do not remember that scene at all, and if it was in the manhwa, I blocked it out, and for good reason in my opinion, because it was very upsetting. Even though it was not graphic, I was thankful that was not in the manhwa. That was one of the scenes that vividly came to mind. That was like, I don't remember this. That's the only moment I feel that was really upsetting. Even though it's not one I would, I guess, would be like the best example that came to mind first, but I appreciate having both to go together to see how this series is just conveyed. Again, I feel like the manhwa is an amazing, incredible adaptation, and was just completely blown away again of seeing those panels in my head as I'm reading. Really cool experience for me personally. But yeah, I would say if you're a novel reader, you could just go for the novel and be totally content. There's nothing in the manhwa that I didn't see if there were things in the manhwa that weren't in the novel. That I did not follow. But I would definitely say if you'd rather be a manhwa only reader and not read the novel, that's okay too, because the story is the same at the heart of it, just they're in different forms of media. I'm excited to see what happens at volume 2. It ended on such a cliffhanger, and I'm worried that it's going to be more intense than how it was in the manhwa, because Penelope is a very smart individual, and it's just hard seeing, like, girl, don't have all your eggs in one basket. You're seeing the signs, and I feel like she's in denial of those signs, and so I'm curious to see how things are going to be moving forward and what's going to happen. I'm definitely going to keep reading, definitely going to keep hating Derek, because yeah, he lost his any slight redemption he had for a time for maybe the first quarter. Long gone, friends, long gone. So yeah, definitely would recommend and excited to keep reading. Next up is Mechanical Marie, and this was just as fun as I was anticipating. I know when I shared what happened when the license announcement came down and I was in my car and how I screamed and everything, I feel like it lived up to that, friends. I feel like it lived up to it. It is about our main female lead. Her name is Marie. She sort of has this stoned face, you would say. She's not expressive at all. Like, even when shockingly nerve-wracking things happen. Like there was a bomb that blew off. It was like she didn't even blink. And so she gets hired because this person comes out. She is sort of like the top dog in the MMA world. And he comes to her, scouting her, saying, hey, can you come work for, ultimately, it would be Arthur, who is the heir to this really famous, prestigious, very wealthy company. Because Arthur has plenty of assassination attempts and just other bad things happening to him. And so they want somebody to, you know, be like a guard. The problem is Arthur doesn't like people. He feels that everybody, I wouldn't say everybody, but from his experience and from even what we're shown as a reader, that everybody really is out just to take him out so they can get his money. Or there's some other kind of thing that's involved where it's all for selfish ambition. It has nothing to do with Arthur. So the guy that comes to Marie here is like, we want you to pretend to be a robot. Yes, they ask her, a human girl, to be a robot. She said, okay, I'll do it. And even though she finds out right from the start that Arthur hates liars, that there's no reason to ever lie, she keeps up the lie and pretends and tells him that she is a robot. And to her dismay, he falls for it, and his entire personality changes when he is around just Marie compared to other people. So unfolds this really quirky romance. In fact, I have told people, if I could sum up this, if I can't find it here, I'll definitely leave the picture that I took. If I could sum up this manga, here it is right here. He's like, somehow or another, I have to think of a way to marry a robot. And yeah, that ultimately is the story in a nutshell, because there's times where Arthur tells Marie, he's like, you know, you really look like a human girl. He's like, but no, you couldn't be that. And then just has some kind of idea that, yeah, she is indeed this robot. Like, even when he lays his head on her lap, he's like, wow, your legs are really hard. It's almost like metal. Of course you're a robot. And in Marie's mind, she's apologizing, saying, no, my muscles are just really hard from her working out and doing the MMA stuff. And he don't realize. He doesn't realize, but it makes the series, or the volume, excuse me, really cute, because he'll be acting like this, super scary, even threatens, well, sort of low-key threatens, mentions that if this one guy with his horrible manners at this dinner he's got to go to, he's like, I might just get fed up and just throw a fork at his throat. And it's like, no, please don't do that. But then when he's with Marie, he's like this. He's so cute and so blushy. And poor Marie don't even know what to make of this. She don't even know what to make with this. And I think even the blurb mentions that, yeah, that he's doting on her, and she's like, now she's not for sure who's going to kill her first, the assassins or his affections. Especially as it goes on, because originally this series started as a one-shot, so it sort of does, I guess you could say, wrap up in one chapter if you really wanted to go that route. But when it keeps going on, it was just so great. I don't even remember what I was going to say, but this is one of my favorite pages, because she was trying to smile, and look, why was it so bad that we couldn't even see it? It sort of reminds me of Sawako from Kimi Todoke, you know, when she smiles and it's really creepy, but when she gives an actual genuine smile, like, let me see if I can find one from, I know there's one from the beginning that was super cute right here. Let me cover up what she says, but look at her smile. It's so beautiful, so sweet, and so genuine. But these moments happen very not often. Not often. Same in Kimi Todoke, but when they do happen, they are so precious, so adorable, and he says, my mechanical is too cute. And I really loved how there came a time where Marie is like, it's weighing on her that she's lying to Arthur, but she doesn't want to leave because she's starting to get attached to him, starting to, I think, have feelings for him, or at least where she wants to serve him as this maid. And she ends up having like this dilemma of, should she tell him? And the guy that, you know, seeked her out, he's like, you can't say anything. You will put our lives literally at risk, and Arthur will take us out. So if you're feeling that way, it's time for you to leave. But I loved how she struggled with that. And even at one moment where she knows that there's an intruder, she knows she needs to take this out, but there was a party happening. People find out that this maid shows no emotions, has just kicked this dude and injured him. Suddenly everybody's terrified. The whole mood has changed. And she's like, oh no, that's not what I wanted to do. I want to help Arthur. I want to aid him. But now as his maid, I might have just ruined his image. And with Arthur, no, he picks her up and he's like, look, my mechanical has helped get rid of this intruder, and he absolutely loves her all over again. It's a really lighthearted story. I don't think it has like a heavy plot, which may sound bad, but I generally don't mean it that way. It's just a fun and very quirky story. Like, it sort of does remind me a little bit of Topeki Honeymoon, which I did talk about in my previous reading wrap up, though it is different because there's no arranged marriage and having to act lovey-dovey and everything. It's just the fact that this female heroine here has to act a certain way. She's trying to pay off her family's debt, and she's really, really strong. Marie, though, doesn't have the same expressions as the female lead does in Topeki Honeymoon, but I liked that kind of connection, I guess you would say, because I love Topeki Honeymoon. And so finding another really quirky series that just has some fun elements that just help you turn off your brain, and you're like, you know what? Let's see what expression this male lead is gonna make. What is he gonna do? Because when he asked Marie, guys, he said, hey, so what kind of batteries, do you take to stay fully charged? Y'all, Marie tells him, what does she say? She's like, I use AAA batteries. And Arthur fell for it. And so he starts carrying a battery around on him all the time and feeds her a battery. And as it shows, he says that she looks really cute. And it's just like, Arthur, my man, like, if you could just connect the dots a little bit, because there's definitely a really cute scene where I honestly was terrified. I was like happy and terrified. Then I'm like, oh my gosh, he is about to find out that she indeed is a human. Like, there was no way that he doesn't see the obvious signs. Even Marie herself, she is not acting like her typical self with no expression. And I was like, oh my goodness. But like, I feel like I was living in that kind of moment of, again, do I cheer for Marie, to be honest, and say, hey, I'm a human being? Or do I not cheer for her and just root for her quietly to continue to be a mechanical maid? Like, y'all, it was such an interesting dilemma that I just never would have expected. So I am eagerly looking forward to getting volume 2. This was a great first volume, lots of laughs, unexpectedly keeping me a little bit on the edge of my seat, which I wasn't planning, but like in the good and best of ways kind of thing. So definitely recommend if you want something funny, you want something quirky, and you're invested to see exactly how a romance is going to unfold when it really doesn't seem like there's any possible way that it could actually unfold. And last but not least, for my final review, I'm going to be talking about my first impression of Reincarnated in a Mafia dating sim. A Yakuza heiress becomes the top-ranked villain's romantic target. I love this. I love this so much. It is in my top 3 favorite things I've read this month. This was also one of the most surprising license announcements that I felt that happened this year. So hoorah, shout out to Tokyo Pop for licensing it. I was so excited. But yeah, this story centers around Francesca, and she is reincarnated into an otome game, not necessarily as the villainess, but as, I believe it's definitely the heroine. It doesn't say on the blurb, but I'm pretty positive that, yeah, that she was the heroine. And so the thing is, before she's reincarnated, she is the granddaughter of a Yakuza mob boss, and so she lives out a not typical peaceful life because she's been kidnapped, she's had people after, and so when she gets reincarnated into this game, she knows exactly everything that's going to happen, that she is this new heroine. Francesca is going to be kidnapped by her fiance Leonardo, who is also like the ultimate crime boss in this reincarnated world that she's in. That she's like, you know what? I don't want anything to do with him. I don't want anything to do with the love interest. She says, I know what's going to happen to me. And she says, I have a second chance and I'm going to go out there and do my best to make friends and live a peaceful life. So she's sort of this, as Leonardo calls her, a goody two-shoes of using her power because in this world, this mafia world, there are 5 different very powerful families who more or less, I guess, serve the king, because it's a monarchy, and they all are like part of the criminal underworld, so to speak. All of them are pretty shady in their own kind of ways, honestly. And so she really doesn't want anything to do with that. But since her father is a mob boss of one of the 5 families, she's having a harder time. But because she's changing things, Leonardo, because at the beginning of the volume, like literally from the opening 2-3 pages, she's like, I want to break this engagement off. And he said, no, I don't want to break it off. And so begins this story of her just aiming in this world that she's been reincarnated to have a second chance. And it's just not going according to her plan. Now, I do not really feel this is a villainous manga. I I do feel when I first heard about it that it was sort of roped in to the villainous manga, and I do feel it hits a lot of those key points though that we see in the villainous genre. Definitely ain't disputing that, because I feel the vibes are there, but she's not necessarily in a villainous role. She's not the bad guy. She knows that she gets taken out like a villainess though, but she honestly is just this earnest girl who's just trying to do the best that she can. And having the short end of the stick before, or at least it's the OG Francesca, but now it's her, I loved how, I feel like a majority of the villainous manga, and that's where I was trying to go with this, is that we see that these reincarnated heroines are like, I am just gonna try and avoid the red flag ending. Like, I don't want that doom or that gloom, and gonna just sort of tweak things so I know how to avoid it from happening. Francesca here is like, no, we gonna change the whole storyline, and every time she sees a storyline is changed, she celebrates because she's like, yes, I am that much closer to getting out of this family, getting away from Leonardo. Not that she's in love with her family, but I should say, just so, again, she's aiming for that peaceful life. Like, even, I think it's funny that she's not even aiming to change the story because of how she knows that she supposedly dies. She's aiming it so that she can have friends in this normal life. I really admired that for her and really loved it. And she is a cool heroine. And I mean that with two ways. Cool as in like, girl is awesome. Like when we see her having this revolver, I was like, man, I think my heart has been captivated. Hopefully I could, yes, right here. Like, she's just awesome. She's just a really cool heroine. And I deeply, deeply admired her and loved everything that she was doing. She's super fun to follow, super to watch her do these things that she's doing. But on the flip side, she's also cool because when she does get kidnapped, girl is just cool about it. She's not panicking. She's not stressing. She's remembering things that her grandfather told her of how to have this situation in control. Like, she even stands up to Leonardo, who is pretty scary in the best of ways, if I'm honest, which is really rare for me. He had scary moments. I feel like my heart was skipping a beat, but I'm like, I'm here, like, but please at the same time, don't be too dangerous. And her, Francesca, like, please don't. But when there's a moment where like he's sort of, it's their first meeting, and I can't really say if he's trying to like fill her out, see how she is, interrogate her kind of thing. I don't feel it's quite like that. But when he mentions like, hey, you could just take me out, gives her the gun to do so, she said, no, no, no. I'm just gonna take myself out, and puts the gun to her own head. And I said, what is going on? Which would lead to the second part of, I really loved how the writer here for the manga and the artist did a fantastic job of not giving us an info dump. I feel like for that scene specifically, I won't go into details because it would be spoilers, but to put it briefly, without again the spoilers, is that we then get a flashback and it's explained of how Francesca knew things about that gun. I thought that was handled so incredibly well, and it wasn't just that moment, that there were other moments where we get flashbacks at these key moments that offer insight and information on why Francesca's saying what she's doing, why she is thinking the way she is, or just her actions in general. I really felt myself engaged through the whole thing, because sometimes if you're not careful, you know, you get these flashbacks that sort of serve like info dumps and it pulls you out of the story. That was not the case here, and I love that very much. So kudos to the writer and kudos to the translator. I think this is the same translator that does The Person I Love, Ask Me to Die on My Sister's Steed, which we did a shoujo quiz yesterday. I absolutely loved it. I hope you enjoyed it as well. But the short story that I mentioned at the end of one of those volumes, I know I've had high praise for. I think it might have even been in my first impression video I did of it. But I'm pretty sure they're the same translator, because the short story at the end of this, so good, written so very well, and I was like, oh my goodness, I love this. Like 10 out of 10, it was perfect. Like, well done to that translator. So yeah, and just as a whole, I actually really did like a lot of the translation and how Leonardo would say different things. And let's talk about Leonardo, y'all. Let's talk about but first, look how cute Francesca is. Look how scary Leonardo is. Like, he has some really intimidating faces. And you know what, I know we're talking about Leonardo, but let's talk about too with that. This is an enemies to lovers story. I loved it. I loved it. I enjoy that trope, but I feel from my experience, I do not read it often because I get really bothered of how, again, this is just for myself, speaking from my own experience and my own feelings, that I really struggle of how you can have these enemy to lovers stories where they're attracted physically to each other. And it's like they will be physically intimate, but at the same time, they're saying how they hate the other person. I don't understand that. I don't find that personally romantic for me, and I need something more than just physical attraction. I need something where they're like, man, I love this about this character, but I also hate it about them. And that is one thing I deeply was striving on for this. There is not a basis with physical attraction being the reason where they're like, okay, I'm still drawn to this person because they're so hot. But I feel like for Leonardo, that he just is so intrigued about Francesca, the things she does and the things she says, that he is interested in her more than just her looks. Francesca, it's harder to say. Like, she has mentioned that she does feel Leonardo is attractive, but I feel like she's just sort of at a point where she's just trying to avoid him. But then the ending, I mean, I thought that for the duration of the entire volume, but then she does something that was completely left field in my opinion at the end. And I said, girl, I don't know what to think. Why did you do what you did? I don't know. That brings me to say that I really, really appreciated how this wasn't just it's an enemies to lovers, but there's so much more to it than just physical attraction. I'm very excited to see how this series will unfold. I hope it doesn't let me down in that regard. Yes, they could be physically attracted to each other. I just don't want them to be like intimate and them saying, oh, I hate this so much. This person's awful and has a long list of why they hate him. But yet they're still being very closely intimate that usually you would only be with the person that you love. Moving on from that though, I truly just hope that it continues to be the super engaging enemies to lovers where we really don't know what's gonna happen because Leonardo has moments like this. I think he sort of reminds me, oh gosh, I can't remember the guy's name, but when I did the first impression of Firefly Wedding, which I wouldn't say is an enemies to lover, but I will say the male lead, oh, they would be besties because the way they can be really, case in point, he could be looking like this, he could be saying how he's gonna go take out other people because he's like, oh, maybe you don't want to be with me because there's another man. And right here, you could tell like, oh, if there's another man, R.I.P. the other man, because he don't stand a chance. When she's like, no, that's not it. But, and then, I mean, granted, this is the page before, but then they'll have happy moments like this. And it's sort of like our female lead has to constantly be on edge because she does not know what is going to happen. And there was, I think, even when she was kidnapped, I feel like there was a moment that happens later on where I was pretty terrified for her because it just felt different. Like, Leonardo is scary, unpredictable. You don't know what he's going to do next. He's very easily amused when she's not afraid, even though he would say, hey, well, why don't you just, beg for your life kind of thing. She's like, no, I'm not going to do that. And I love when she come out, she's like, I'm not going to let anybody avenge what I'm going to do. I'm going to put it in my own hands. I said, girl, you're just so cool. And she's just like so incredibly cool, y'all. Like, I could not get over it. There were so many good moments. I found myself giggling even when things are scary. So I'm over like giggling. And I'm like, I'm terrified, but that's okay. Like, it was an incredible experience. And I just, considering, I mean, with Mechanical Maria, I don't remember seeing like a lot of spoilers before. And I don't really even know the ending, so I haven't seen spoilers that far out. But I felt like I knew so many people that had been reading it or had read it that they spoke so highly. But when it comes to Reincarnated Mafia Dating Sim, I had this on my wish list before I knew anybody had read it, was even interested in it. So I knew the least amount about it. And I feel like it was everything I remember being so excited to find. It was everything I'd hoped it would be. It's a 10 out of 10 for me. I mean, like, maybe the only like complaint I would have is there is magic in this world. I don't know if it's bad to say because I'm not trying to like knock the creator or anything, but I felt like the words were surprisingly simple when it came to the magical abilities, that it almost felt overly simple that I didn't quite follow things that were happening. I feel like that sounds confusing the way I worded it because I don't want to go in depth about it because one of the things actually is sort of a key point of what could happen moving forward. But that was the only thing I think maybe I was struggling a little bit with, and also I was tired at the time that I read it, so that could definitely factor in, but I really enjoyed it. I mean, it was easily a 10 out of 10 read for me. I haven't got all my September pre-orders, like I haven't pre-ordered them all yet, and I was actually going to do it the other day, and I said, no, Laura, said you should wait. Read volume 1. I said, no, you shouldn't have waited. You should have already gotten and done it because I just enjoyed it so much. I mean, and the art itself was really nice. Oh, let me show you this panel. Oh my gosh. So our male lead is not only the super awesome guy here, looking super handsome and everything, right? There is another guy. There is another, and whew, look at this page. Look how cool he looks. He's about to go beat somebody up. And I said, oh, so my heart is captivated. I'm here. Oh my goodness, too. And Francesca's dad, my friend Fire had made a comment in the Discord because she was reading it. And she's like, the dad is so hot. Yes, I was like, we should not have parents looking, this isn't the parent, but I was like, we should have parents looking this great in manga. Like, I mean, everybody just looks very well drawn, very attractive, very nice. And I loved it for that too. Like, again, all of this was great. I would highly recommend it if you're looking what seems to be a non-spicy enemies to lovers, if you're looking for something that has those villainous vibes that, you know, will scratch that itch but isn't actually a villainous manga. Definitely has that down, and you really enjoy the creator of Seven Time Loop. If you enjoy her writing, oh, you will love this. You will love this. It was great, and again, easily one of my favorite things I've read this month. I don't envy future me for when they have to choose officially what the favorite read is of this month, because I know it's going to be on that struggle bus, but this will be the contender. It will be in the top 3 because that's just how much I deeply enjoyed it. And as you can see, I left all of these glowing recommendations all around. I'm so excited to have this. I mean, honestly, like doing this first impression is such a joy because not only do I enjoy doing first impressions, and I'm thankful that seeing things that people have said in my feedback form that you guys enjoyed as well. But these, all 3 of these represented 3 of my most anticipated releases of 2025, and knowing I deeply enjoyed them makes my heart so happy. But I would love to hear from you, friend. Are you interested in reading any of these? Which one of these sound most interesting to you? Let me know down below. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!